When Vasco da Gama stepped off his ship in Calicut in 1498, locals asked the Portuguese explorer exactly what he was looking for. His answer was brief: spices and Christians. Europeans didn't introduce Christianity to the Indian subcontinent. Da Gama was actively searching for a community that had already been living there for nearly 1,500 years. The true originator of the Indian Christian faith was one of Jesus's original 12 apostles, the man famously known as Doubting Thomas. To figure out how a Middle Eastern faith took root in first-century India, we have to look at an ancient and highly controversial manuscript, the Acts of Thomas. According to this mythical text, Thomas arrives in India and is hired by the Indo-Parthian king Gondophares to construct a massive physical palace. But Thomas ignores the blueprints. Instead, he takes the construction budget and distributes the king's vast wealth to the poor. An enraged Gondophares confronts him. Thomas calmly replies that he hasn't built an earthly estate, but rather a palace in heaven. For centuries, Western historians viewed King Gondophares as a literary invention, a phantom king in a religious text. That skepticism collapsed when the first coins bearing his name surfaced in the 19th century. Looking at this antique map, discoveries confirm King Gondophares was a real first-century ruler. His massive kingdom stretched from Iran into northwest India. From here, Thomas traveled south down the western coastline, reaching the Malabar coast in modern-day Kerala. Here, he didn't preach through conquest. He integrated into the local society, successfully converting citizens and even members of royal families through peaceful assimilation. This journey birthed the St. Thomas Christians. Their unique architectural and cultural footprint survives today as a living relic of that ancient journey. Unlike later European colonizers who demanded strict adherence to Western norms, Thomas's early Indian Christians fully embraced local Sanatan traditions. They adopted specific Hindu practices. Brides wore the Mangalsutra, and families performed the Annaprashan, the first rice-eating ceremony for infants. Looking at this breakdown of their social structure, they even maintained local naming conventions and the rigid Hindu caste hierarchy. Upper caste converts sat at the top, Persian and Syrian migrants in the middle, and lower caste converts formed the base. Thomas's physical journey finally came to an end on the eastern coast in Mylapore, Chennai, where he was martyred. Before his death, he established a faith blending Middle Eastern theology and Indian tradition, physically anchored here at his final resting place. Fast forward to the 15th century. When the Portuguese arrived, they were horrified by these deeply Indianized Christians. The colonizers aggressively forced Latin onto the locals, banned their integrated Hindu customs, and injected a strict European flavor into the faith. This intense interference fractured the community, causing the first major rifts between the native Indian Christians and the new European arrivals. In contrast to Portuguese aggression, the Mughal Empire showed profound intellectual curiosity. In the 16th century, Emperor Akbar invited Jesuit priests to his grand court to engage in deep, scholarly debates over the Bible. European intervention attempted to erase 1,000 years of history, forcing a Western colonial narrative onto a faith that had been natively Indian since its inception. This brings us back to the palace in heaven metaphor. In the Acts of Thomas, the palace is a spiritual architecture. Thomas spent the king's treasure to establish a community that would survive for 2 millennia, independent of any European influence. His work created a presence that wove itself into the ancient fabric of Sanatan traditions, surviving even as empires rose and fell. Despite the colonial-era fractures and the persistence of internal hierarchies, the core identity of the St. Thomas Christians is defined by these deep, ancient roots. This is a first-century Indian story, reaching back to an era when the East and West first met on the Malabar coast.